Welcome to Being Revealed with Stephanie and Alex. I'm Stephanie Cunningham.
And I'm Alex Holtzaffel. This episode is brought to you by Revelation U, Reiki and Wellbeing. Revelation U is on a mission to help millions of people understand who they are and how they work, so they can create a life that feels deeply satisfying.
We believe aligning your energy and elevating your consciousness is the ultimate form of personal and professional development. To support you on your path to a more connected life, we offer Reiki, spiritual life coaching, live and online courses, and corporate wellness programs.
Each offering is designed to help you get reacquainted with yourself and inspire you to create a life that feels exactly the way you want it to. Continue your journey at revelationu.com. That's REVELATIONU.com.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to Being Revealed.
2024.
Are we helping you become revealed?
Well, you know what? It's working for us. I think. We were talking about that before we did this podcast that, especially the last one got pretty personal.
Yeah.
And for me anyway, it helped me kind of recognize some things that I was feeling in 2023 that I wasn't really able to put into words.
Well, yeah, and it seemed like while it was going on, I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff coming out, and you were processing it. But I think afterwards, you realize, like, I've been trying to explain how I've been feeling the whole year, and I just finally figured it out.
Yeah.
So it's doing this helped you kind of put into words like how you were feeling the whole time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I actually played it for my therapist, like a few parts of it. And I was like, oh, I think this is how I feel about stuff. Yeah. And she's like, oh yeah, great. And she was glad to hear that. And I think the last time I was like, I think we're going to have one more. Well, we're going to keep going.
Yeah, we need to keep meeting.
Yeah. So it's definitely helping. It's definitely helping. And the therapy and the podcast is helping not only us, but other people too. And that's really cool.
Yeah. And it's a hobby, it's a way for us to spend time together. But then we kind of talking about this stuff kind of helps keep us grounded, or makes us think a little bit more in depth about our everyday relationship and everyday with ourselves and with other people, so, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is the second part of what we talked about 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, the impact of relationships on growth, both personal growth and spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So we said we'd be back for part 2.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So much to talk about. I think last time we mainly talked about like work relationships, and which that's a big part, You think about your everyday life, and if you work an 8-hour, 12-hour shift, that's either a third or half of your day around people. So then the other big part is like home life, family life, and and then you do have your personal relationships too, but with yourself, that is a relationship.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's kind of where we want to start is, talking about how relationships help implement those spiritual principles into your life. And that's really, we can read about spiritual principles, we can talk about spiritual principles, but they don't really make a difference unless you take action and put them into place.
And I'm a big believer in action, and maybe that's from my experience with 12-step program, because like you said, you can have all the knowledge and you can know what to do or know how you should act, but until you actually start putting it into practice, it's just information.
Right.
And that's the hardest thing, though. The hardest thing is making a conscious decision to be like, I want to behave differently, or I want to respond differently. Because in the moment, like, you know what to do. You always, after something happens that you don't agree with or you don't like, then that's when you think, well, I should have done this. Because in the moment, you your emotions take over and you act upon your emotions rather than the spiritual principles. So
it takes a minute to get to the other side of that. And it's all about kind of that conscious decision making. So being so present with yourself and with the other person to say, okay, I'm starting to feel this way. I need to slow down. How do I want to react? Right? Instead of just reacting.
Yeah.
You know? And that in and of itself is a practice, like an action-based practice, right? Is staying present when you're in conversation or when you're in a frustrating situation at the grocery store or whatever. It's just pulling yourself back and saying, okay, we need to take a minute. How am I going to respond to this?
One, I think it's knowing what triggers you too. I'm just sitting here thinking about, like, I think one of the biggest, not issues, but one of the things we have is when we're doing, like, it always seems to be if I'm hanging a picture or hanging a shelf and trying, we tend to get in arguments. So whenever we're doing like housework like that, I kind of go into it, consciously, like I need to bite my tongue. I need to not like react out of frustration and it's just like maybe something's not going my way and then I take it out on you. And so that's kind of like putting that, making a conscious decision beforehand. Like I know this is going to stress me out. So I need to not react poorly.
Yeah, be present and available for that emotion, like when it comes up.
Yeah. So that's one way you can do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I think that's been probably the times where we've argued the most is hanging stuff. I don't know, something about hanging pictures. It's just, I don't know what it is. I hate it. I hate it. It's like I can't get it right, and then you're like, no, maybe you should put it here. And then it's just like, I don't know. Something about it is a big trigger for me. So
you know what we probably need to get? Are those like things that you stick on the wall with the lasers?
Yeah. Like,
That might
but even that would still, then we wouldn't be able to do that, right? And then, like the thing that's supposed to make things easier, then you start arguing about that because you can't figure that out. But
so just call Bill.
Yeah. Call our contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, in the home life, there's a lot of opportunities probably, to put spiritual principles to practice. What were you going to say?
Absolutely. And, I'm a highly sensitive person, and I think Kyle's a highly sensitive person, my son, and it's a different dynamic. I think I have to put my patience cap on, and really try to practice that, because I understand what it feels like to be highly sensitive. However, I get activated with some of the things some of his responses, or some of the things that he just enjoys doing, like the sound of the yo-yo is like nails on a chalkboard. But I want him to do it because he loves it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I need to put my patience cap on and engage with him in a way that I would want to be engaged with as a child. So there's a lot of like kind of looking back, and that's what I want to do. I want to give him those experiences that my mom primarily gave me. She just naturally understood how to work with me,
how to talk to you, and approach you. Yeah.
And I think it can be more difficult for me. So I have to be very conscious and very present.
Well, and that's another thing with going back to like reacting or acting on your emotions or how you're feeling rather than acting on a spiritual principle. In the moment you're like frustrated and you're on edge and you're high strung and you just want to like yell or stop it, or will you go something, but that doesn't really yield the best result either. So, right. And that, I think that's primarily like some people might not care. That might be how they handle situations throughout their whole life. It doesn't bother them. But I know with me, if I act out towards someone
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I've upset them and that eats me apart.
Mm-hmm.
So then at that point I want to, it's like, well, I need to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So, but some people don't have any problem with that. So
Right.
maybe we're not talking to those types of people, but if you're going through your daily life and you feel like you're not interacting with people well and then you're feeling guilty about it,
Mm-hmm.
then that's just making you feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to behave like that, but you got to make the conscious decision to try to act differently.
To go along with that, yes, making a conscious decision to implement the ways of being that you want to see in your life, right? But also giving yourself compassion for the fact that I screwed up in this particular situation. And that's okay. I know what I'd like to do next time. And I'm going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to keep that present for the next time that situation pops up.
Yeah, you definitely, not beating yourself up, but then thinking about it now, another thing that you can learn from the relationship or spiritual principle or whatever is how to apologize. If you do, that's a big one because that's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that's another thing, that having relationships that you can learn how to admit that you're at fault and like, I'm sorry, I need to handle that better next time. And I didn't mean, So even when you're in the wrong, you can not necessarily correct it, but you can learn how to humble yourself.
Right.
So,
and some people feel like they shouldn't have to apologize to their kids, even if they messed up or, talked to them inappropriately or, blew up, whatever it is. I totally disagree with that. I apologize to Kyle when I feel like I'm wrong, or I'll
blow up.
or get, frustrated. And I'll say, you know what, I'm sorry, that I reacted that way. Whatever it is.
Things happen all the time. But,
Yeah. So, I was going to give an example, but it could be anything.
Yeah.
But just apologizing and communicating and saying it wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that. I think it's important to apologize to your children too. I do. Some people have I don't apologize to my child, kind of policy.
Because they might think they don't want to lose that alpha.
Right.
Or, it's a sign of weakness or.
Yeah, I think that's probably why, they like that sense of, or feel like that sense of hierarchy needs to be in place.
Yeah.
I don't feel that sense of hierarchy. I feel like my role with him isn't he's not my property.
Yeah.
He's a person that, we're trying to guide and educate and help him determine what his core value system is. And
be the best person he can be.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it kind of goes, it's funny because it goes right along with what we're talking about, that relationship. If you give them the apology and say I was in the wrong, then that kind of teaches them that it's okay, and that stuff happens, and that it teaches them some spiritual practice as well. And hopefully they catch on to that rather than just being yelled at all the time and not really knowing why, or just like thinking that's normal, which, sometimes it's appropriate. I'm not saying they need screamed at, but there needs to be like a firm, no, that's not going to happen in this house. And but when it's kind of like out of character or just not warranted, then and I think that teaches them. It teaches them that it's okay to humble yourself and apologize. And,
be vulnerable. Yeah.
Because that is a hard thing in our society, is to admit when you're wrong. Or taking criticism too. Those kind of go hand in hand, and that's part of life.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we had talked about was learning how other people work, right? And that's an important thing to learn when you're dealing with lots of different types of people, and lots of people in general, not even lots of different types of people. But some people might not take a joke the way you intended based upon their own personal histories, right? Yeah. Perhaps that's not how their family worked. Perhaps they got too much criticism and it is activating them in ways that, you just don't know. But, learning how, in relationships, learning how to navigate different types of people.
Yeah.
Is one thing that you brought up. That has to be done by taking action too, right? So being open to when you're getting that feedback, whether it's just body language or actual words communicating, that someone didn't appreciate what you said or did appreciate what you said, and learning from each interaction.
Yeah, and not everybody's the same, and you do. I'm not saying you have to change who you are to accommodate people, but you have to approach people differently. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, different. Not everybody receives things the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, learning how to interact with people and different people appropriately.
I always think, to your point, you don't have to change who you are. That said, I always think that you need to be, and I know this is what you were saying, you always need to be respectful.
Yeah, you do. And so, again, some people are like, well, I don't care. This is what I do, or this is what I like. But it is kind of disrespectful if you know. And like with you, I know there's certain TV shows that you don't like that I watch that you don't like the humor. And one is being South Park. I love. So I try not to really have it on around you. And I'd be like, I don't care. She can deal with it. But I just be respectful of it, you know. And
there's a million other things to watch. Yeah.
So just little stuff like that, once you get to know someone.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I get my South Park fix, when I need it, I get it. But a lot of times before, I would just have it on like all day long, or I would turn it on at night in bed. But that's one of the things. Like, I know it can be hard for you to sleep with the TV on, but a lot of times I don't put South Park on because I'm afraid you're gonna hear all the banter in the background and it's gonna affect you or something. Like give you subliminal messages or something. But no, I just, try to be respectful in that sense.
No, that's one of the things, like respecting boundaries.
Yeah, and boundaries is one too.
And I appreciate that. It's not even something that we've had to have a conversation about. It's just you recognize that, and you recognize that that's not something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And so you respect that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. So, and that's, again, like taking action. You have to take action on those things. So if you were continuing to watch South Park and I had to communicate, right, that, hey, I don't really like that around.
Yeah.
Can we watch something else? I would hope that you'd respect that boundary. But to my point is, sometimes you just have to communicate it. Even if you don't want to and you're afraid of that quote unquote confrontation, you're afraid of what the other person might come back with or their reaction. It is important to have those conversations like, hey, I don't like that. Can we not do that?
Yeah.
Or
and I kind of brought that up earlier too, to where through relationships, you kind of making yourself a priority is building a spiritual principle or whatever too. I know I keep saying spiritual principle, but sometimes you have to put yourself first too. And I know a lot of us, like, I'm a people pleaser. I don't want to upset anyone, or I would bend over backwards, or and there's times where it's good to be selfless and it's good to sacrifice your time or this, and there's other times where it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
And you learn that through relationships, and sometimes you do have to be like, no, or I need to take time for myself, or I've been spreading myself thin, and it's okay for me to say no. So
that's one thing I've learned from you. You're very good at communicating your boundaries and communicating what it is that you need, especially because you work nights and sleep is very important and you really have to protect your sleep. So you might say, okay, I'm going to go lay down. So kind of leave me alone for this period of time because I need to catch up or I need to rest before I wake up and go work a 12-hour shift. Also, you're very good at communicating, hey, I think, maybe we'll just have a night to ourselves tonight.
Which is important.
Which is important. Absolutely. If you're in a relationship and you're just kind of doing doing the same thing every night and you're like, okay, we're going to sit and watch TV at this time, or, you know, whatever, you're not really thinking about taking care of yourself or thinking about, you know, kind of what it is that you need. You're very good at connecting that for yourself and saying, hey, is it okay if I'm just going to watch or you're not even saying like, is it okay? Yeah. You know, you're just like,
watch the game tonight.
I'm going to watch the game tonight. So, you know, and then I recognize that, oh yeah, cool. I'll just go upstairs and read, or I'll play on the computer or write or do whatever I'm going to do. Yeah. You know, and that's usually I need that too.
Yeah.
I just am not thinking about it.
Well, and I think that that's one of the things. I think maybe you feel I communicate that a lot. Maybe I just communicate it more because I think since we started living together, we just kind of congregate together, not thinking like it's okay for us to go do our own thing. And I think we still kind of, but I think it's because we enjoy being around each other. Like when we weren't living together, and maybe we probably had more nights on our own to where we did the stuff where you either did like work stuff or read. And, you know, I think when we moved in together, we just kind of gravitated towards each other and we didn't really know how to, but it's a learning process. And that's communication is a big thing too. You know, it's a practice because you do like relationships can teach you how to communicate your needs and your wants. Without relationships, it's hard to learn that.
Yeah. And that's helped me with other relationships better kind of communicate what it is that I need or what I'm thinking. So like, for example, with Kyle, you know, he might like to tease and joke around and that's fine. I'm happy to do that, but sometimes it can get further over the line or it's been too much for a long period of time.
He doesn't know when to stop.
Right. And so I'll say, you know, I'm done with this. You know, it's like, I can take a joke, but I'm starting to feel like this isn't funny anymore. So maybe we cool it for now. You know, whatever kind of conversation I have. So it's a calm conversation. It's not like saying that, you know, it's just, hey, I'm not feeling comfortable with this. Let's stop.
That hurts my feelings.
It hurts my feelings. Yeah. And I have said that. I know it's another unpopular parenting thing to not let to not get your feelings hurt by your kids. And it's like, you know what? You get your feelings hurt by your kids. You know? Yeah. I understand that they're kids and they're going through learning processes and learning how to be in relationship with other people who, no matter what kind of relationship it is, parent, grandparent, friend, whatever. Me saying that my feelings are hurt is a way of communicating what I need and also helping him, hopefully, understand my boundaries and understand that people take things in different ways. And that's okay.
Yeah. And he looks older than what he is. And we kind of think like he should emotionally understand things better, but really he's not there yet.
No.
But yeah, and that's something as he tends to get older, he's going to figure out that not everybody accepts things the same way or can handle stuff the same way. Yeah. So yeah.
And that's okay. And then you get to decide who you want to be in relationship with and they get to decide who they want to be in relationship as well.
When we were kind of talking about what we wanted to talk about, we didn't really have communication in there, but really, and we're talking about what you learn from relationships, but they both kind of like, it's like a two-way street. And communication is such...
You learn how to communicate.
Yeah, you learn how to communicate, and communication on the other side helps a relationship exist.
Yes.
You know, so it's like you learn relationships can teach you how to communicate and express how you're feeling, what you need, what you want. And at the same time, doing that makes a relationship survive. If you, and maybe all relationships, you know, you think more about intimate relationships or significant others, but all relationships are like that too, you know?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that and you brought up earlier was how relationships impact personal and professional, or personal and spiritual growth, and professional growth for that matter, is that they can teach you how you want to be and how you don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about what that means to you.
If you're an observant person and you see how people treat other people, I mean, that's always a big one.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how people talk to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I know
and what their reaction is.
Yeah. And that's always one. I think for me, that's an easier one to pick up and learn. Like, oh, if I ever have a similar conversation, I'm not going to approach it that way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of implementing.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I think I mentioned this before we started too, like personal. Like you can learn from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of talked about in the beginning, like you react a certain way and then maybe it happens often and then you're just like, I just don't like how I feel when I react this way.
Mm-hmm.
Or so
I don't like the reaction I get from someone else.
Yeah. So it's just, then you can kind of, I think when you get to a certain point where you're like, I just don't like feeling that way
Mm-hmm.
after I blow up or after I react, then you can learn how not to react.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one way. But there's all kinds of examples out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're observant and look around, like you'd
Mm-hmm.
be in the grocery store and see how people treat each other.
Yeah. Say, I want to be the person that opens the door. I want to be the person that helps get a can for somebody
Mm-hmm.
that can't reach it. Or, when you see someone else doing that, it can be inspiring.
Yeah, you can see, and I try to do stuff like that, but you also have to be very observant because
Mm-hmm.
some little person or little old lady or little old man could be trying to get something from a top shelf and everyone's in their own little world that they're just walking by, not paying
Mm-hmm.
attention. But if you're observant, and me being like 6'3",
Right.
you need like, hey, do you need help with that?
Right.
So, and it's not saying all other people need to pay more attention. I think we're all just kind of like, we all have tunnel vision. We want to get in and out. We're not paying attention. But I don't know. And in public, I'm very like observant of my space.
Mm-hmm.
And the people around me, because it's so easy to like back into someone or accidentally like run into someone at the grocery store. So I just have always been very observant what's going on around me.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, I can see stuff like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, you can also learn from close relationships or, anybody, strangers, how you don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see someone speaking negatively to someone who's working at the store or speaking negatively to their spouse or friend or child,
Mm-hmm.
You can recognize, I hope I don't ever look like that.
Yeah.
And take action not to,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be the same in professional relationships as well, or professional environments as well. Say, oh, I really like how that person's working hard, or I like how they manage things. And, I don't like how this is happening over here. So, it can inspire you to grow or move or navigate in a different way than what you're currently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very helpful. I mean, it's helpful no matter how old you are, but especially when you're younger, when you're in that 20s period, that's huge. I did a lot of that in my 20s. I used my life as a class intentionally. And that can really help with professionalism, personal relationships, growing into the person that you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
That can be just such a ripe time of life to really learn and grow and expand.
It's a foundation.
Yes. Yeah, in all ways.
And the hardest part, again, is action
Mm-hmm.
and making that decision, because it's hard in the moment. Once you get some good experiences or realizing like, oh, I didn't react to that situation poorly, then I think it kind of builds and it gets easier.
Yes.
But something I was just thinking of when you were talking about, like, you see things out in public, and I feel like, you can see like a bad interaction in public, and really we're so quick to just judge and be like, well, they're awful people, and then just move on.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of that. Rather than like, you really don't know what kind of day a person's having. You don't know what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than it being like a matter of judgment, maybe just take it as a learning experience. Because you don't have to judge. You don't have to be like, man,
No.
what a horrible human being. rather than looking at those situations like that, you'd be like, man, they must be having a bad day, and I hope I don't react like that when I have a bad day. Thinking about it now, it's like when you see situations like that, we want, and it's human nature probably, we just want to judge, and that's it.
You know, to be honest, we're all one reaction away from being on the news.
We are.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when
you'd like to think
road
not,
rage or something crazy happen at a baseball game where it gets heat. Yeah, I mean, really.
You just
honestly,
don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I would ever want to get in a fight at a baseball game, but yeah, like, I think we have a lot of problem as a society controlling our emotions now. We're all very excitable and just intense. We're intense about everything. You see it on social media. We all want to argue, and it bleeds over into the real world, and when we just have trouble controlling those emotions. So, but like you said, we're one bad mistake away from ending up on the news or doing something that could really be detrimental to our career or life or whatever. Like, you see road rage happen and people do stupid stuff with that. You said you had a problem with road rage when you were younger.
I did. I never got out of my car, but
no, but you would get extremely upset.
I would scream and ah! And I remember I was driving with my friends and I got so mad about something and I punched the roof of my car. Nobody who knows me now would believe that happened.
I see you doing that.
You know, but I was intense and yeah.
And I'm sure you weren't that was probably just in the car for some reason you were like that. I'm sure it wasn't necessarily.
I was intense all over. Yeah, I was intense in my work. I was intense. I always said I was a very passionate person. But I that was part of learning and growing, you know, just understanding how to manage my emotions and where was the outlet for those intense emotions and that intense way of being, because I still need to get that out. Yeah. You know, and it could be through singing when I listen to music rarely, and it could be through using my body. That's one of the things that I really liked about gymnastics is that I could use my body. I'm a physical person. So, you know, and sometimes I just get in the mood to do a bunch of yard work, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just using that energy. So, and talking on the microphone.
Well, yeah, you love a microphone. So you don't need a microphone.
I don't. I could just, all of Marysville can hear me. Yeah. But there is another relationship that I wanted to point out. We talked about parent relationships, child relationships, work, strangers. Being a parent of an animal, you can learn so much from an animal. And I will say one thing that really struck me from being a dog parent with Dexter was when he got older. His body was failing. Yeah. And he was I remember he was sick. At the end of his life, he had pancreatitis. And he was on prednisone. And he never had accidents or anything like that, you know. When he was a puppy, maybe. But I know this one time he got up and he just stood up and just started peeing on the floor. Yeah. And just looked at me like, I'm sorry. You know? Yeah. But just being with him and taking care of him through that phase of his life gave me a lot of compassion for older beings and the experience that older beings have towards the end of their life, and, you know, offering more compassion in those situations. That was something that really hit me. Yeah, and that teaches you, I don't want to say how to love someone when they're at their worst, but not at their worst physically. And that's hard, you know, and it's not the same person or animal that you know. They're still that person. Yeah. And I think dealing with our puppy Butters, who will be, he just turned 10 months today or yesterday? The 10th, yeah. Learning that he's in teenage years and some of the behaviors that are annoying or that are not troublesome, but just
really, like biting at the leash and jumping, like he jumped up and busted my lip one day. But realizing that he's a teenager.
Yeah.
He's being defiant. He's trying to be independent. I'm not saying that, he still needs work, but then I need to not get extremely angry with him either. And realize that when they say puppies or dogs, no, they understand about as much as a 2-year-old, which I don't necessarily believe that, but they're not human beings. They don't and trying to be understanding and compassionate or patient. And then also you got to devote your time. If you don't, you got to train and you got to work with them. So this is stuff I'm learning through him and trying not to act out of anger if he's doing stuff, and realize that he is going through a phase of his life where there's all these hormones he's trying to figure the world out. He can't help it.
Oh my gosh, the hormones in this house. We have Butter's hormones. We have Kyle's hormones. He's 11, so he's tween going into the puberty time frame. My hormones and perimenopause, you're like, I'm gonna go find another house.
Well, the next podcast might be just Stephanie. You might have to get a special guest in here because my bags might be packed.
And, there are too many damn hormones in this house for me.
Find a place where hormones aren't flaring everywhere.
I remember, so I was 36 when I had Kyle, and I remember my mom saying, menopause and teenagers don't really go well together. I'm like, well, I guess we'll have to figure it out.
And I found you at the perfect time. No wonder why I've been dealing with the anxiety. But no, it's just another thing, the whole relationship. You can either let it sink you, or you can learn from it, or you can just be like, hey, I'm going to go stay at my mom's for a day or two.
Right, exactly.
No, but really, it's how you look at it and approach it. You can run, or if the house is crazy, you can run away from it. Or you can be like, well, how can I learn to accept this or make it work? So, which is hard.
Change my reaction to it.
Yeah, or you can just pack a bag and get away for a few days. So.
And I think that's a big one, though, is when people come in for coaching and they're like, my life is, I don't like my life. It feels terrible. I'm feeling like this doesn't work for me anymore. And they really want to blow up their life, and I always say you don't have to blow up your life. So when you're in this particular phase, or not phase, but particular situation, just start with being present. Just start with changing your reaction,
That's the one thing you have control over.
That's what you have control over, and that doesn't mean that you might make changes that are big in the future, but when you're in that high state of emotion, the best thing you can do for yourself in that situation is just change your reaction to what's going on.
Yeah, and that might be the one thing. We always want to change things around us, but really what we have control over the most is probably how we react and feel.
Right.
And then, sometimes you do have to change people, places, and things.
Absolutely.
But that, should be not a last resort, but, if you can't.
You have to do it from a place of.
Where you're right. Yeah. You're inside where, if you've done all the inside work and it's, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Anything else?
No, I think, you guys might have a different co-host next week. I think it's been a good conversation. We probably talked longer than we thought we would, but hopefully people hang in and listen to it all. I think we ended pretty good there. But
we would love to hear how relationships have impacted your personal and spiritual and professional growth. So leave some comments and let us know what your experience has been. Yeah,
I'm sure. It's good to hear other people's experiences. It's what this is about too, sharing experiences.
Yeah,
so.
For sure.
Thanks for listening.
All right. See you next time.
See you.